does one go from avoiding the church to serving the church in the creative arts ministry? Well, this is Charice's story.
Okay, my name is Charice Dickerson, and this is my story. Uh, when I was from roughly 2 to 4 years old, I was molested by my grandfather. Um, I also started dancing at the age of 6, but as a family tradition growing up, we used to come to celebration of Christmas when it was Phoenix First Assembly. Me and my family, it was yearly a thing. The Easter play, the Christmas play came residually. So the very last time that I was actually molested was here at a play by my grandfather. And the lights had gone out, and he went under my skirt and did his business. And from that day, I hated Dream City. I hated celebration of Christmas. I hated life, and ended up telling my mom. She did the right thing, had my back, got him out of my life, but ended up on drugs. My life spiraled out of control. Drugs, alcohol, ended up a teen mom. And then once I became a mom, I stopped using drugs and, focused on being a mom and trying to get my life right. Tried to go to counseling for the molestation, was too much, relapsed on drugs, lost my son because I was on drugs and thought I had OD'd. And then I ended up getting clean and doing the right thing because I didn't want my son to be in like the system or with family. And so once I got my son back, the day that I got my son back, actually, my grandfather was a patient at a nursing home I was working at, because at that point I had gone to school for CNA work and stuff. So he was a patient, found that out, had an opportunity to forgive him, and somewhat care for him in his last days. And from that time, I never used drugs again. I got my life right. Growing up in a Christian home, I started trying to find the Lord again, and came back to full circle of this past year, coming back to Dream City to be in celebration of Christmas, which was a dream of mine since I was a kid. So I came back full circle after 22 years when I saw a friend in one of the plays. She invited me to come see her in 2018. Hated being here, but then I thought, the devil stole this from me. He can't have it no more. I'm gonna be in this play. I still love to dance and perform. I'm gonna be in it. And so 2021, I was in celebration of Christmas, and it was the most joyful experience of my whole life. And I mean, that was the last door of my healing that I needed to face also. But my son was in the play, so then it became like this family ordeal. And so now we're stuck forever back here.
Well, today we get to interview one of our amazing church members at Dream City Church, Charice Dickerson. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So Charice, Pastor Luke shared your testimony a
Yes.
couple months ago, I think in December.
Yes.
And all of us were shocked because we didn't know who you were on stage, and then we learned your story and we were like, how can this be?
Yeah.
And so Charice, why don't you just start from the top from your perspective? I think that's the best way to dive into this.
Sure, from my testimony?
Yeah.
Okay, so growing up, Dream City celebration of Christmas was a family tradition of ours. We came faithfully every year.
Wow.
And so since I was a little girl, I started dancing at the age of 6. And so being a performer, coming here to like a family tradition, not only did I love the show, but I wanted to be in the show for like over and over. And I used to say, Mom, I'm going to be in the show. Mom, I'm going to be in the show one day. And she said, oh, honey, yes, you will. And I used to come with my family, my grandfather, my grandma, my cousins, my aunts. I mean, that's when they had pews. So we took up the pews, and it was Phoenix First Assembly.
Right.
And, but I was also being molested from the age of maybe 2 and 4, all the way to the age of 11. And so my grandfather was the one that was molesting me. And the very last time that I was molested was at a Dream City or Phoenix First Assembly celebration, a Christmas play.
Oh, my heart.
And it was actually when the like the King's procession came and the lights kind of came down, and I had leaned over the pew and I was like so amazed and watching all the dancers, and he had slipped like under my dress and done his business. And so from that day I thought, well, if Satan is in the church, like I don't want anything to do with any of this, like ever again. And that was actually, I think within that week I told my mom, because my mom didn't know, my family didn't know. And so once I told my mom, she cut him off, and
Good.
that was the end of that. But my life just took a spiral of like drugs and running away and alcohol, and I became a teen mom and mess.
And would you say it was a result of that incident?
Yes, very much so.
And so the fact that something happened in the church, it was like,
Oh,
God,
yeah.
why?
Yeah. Not only was it like, why would you do this in the church? But then it was like, I was mad at, looking back, I was mad at like the church, and I'm like, but they didn't do anything. But I just think it was, how could somebody go to church and do this in
Yeah.
such a big production with so many people there?
Yeah, we don't understand
Yeah,
that level
yeah.
of evil.
Yeah.
So I know many years after that you didn't attend church. And in
Correct.
fact, you really wouldn't come
No,
near.
no.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, I didn't want to have anything to do with the church.
Naturally.
Naturally, yeah. Well, growing up, I mean, my family was Christian. We were born again, saved, and so, I mean, I knew the truth, but especially with Dream City, I was like, I'm never going back there, ever. And I went to church here and there, like with where our home church was at,
Yeah.
but I didn't want anything to do with any of it.
So Charice, we know the end, right? We know that you are now in the church and all of that. So how did it all come full circle after that incident? How did you come back to the church again?
So one of my friends, really close family friend, she was in the production back in 2018, and she said, hey, why don't you come watch me in Celebration of Christmas? And I was like, oh, is that one of those big plays that, Phoenix First Assembly or Dream City puts on? And she's all, yeah. And I was like, oh. I mean, she knew my story, but she didn't know like that part of the church part of it. And I was like, oh, I'll think about it. And so then I just thought, you know what? It was 22 years at that point, and I'm like, it's time. I can't stay away forever. So I said, after I gave it some thought, I said, sure, I'll come watch you. And I came and watched her, and I was so full of emotion. I was angry, but I was so happy to see her. And then I was like, oh, this is just as beautiful as ever. And that's the moment when I was like, the devil like stole this from me, that God didn't do this. And my love for the stage and dancing and performing is still so like prevalent in my life that I'm gonna be back on that stage. And not only I'm gonna be on the stage because I want to be on the stage, but that's gonna be like my last healing door, because I had already done a whole bunch of healing and forgiveness, but that's the last door.
And speaking of healing and forgiveness, you got the opportunity to speak to your grandfather in his last days.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, so he ended up being a patient at the nursing home I was working at, and instead of wanting to kill him like I thought God brought him to me to do, I walked into the room and asked him a few questions to make sure it was him, had to, reconcile my memory, and it was him. But when I walked in the room, I can't even explain, like, there's no description to explain what that room was like except heavenly. And I know the Lord and all his angels and the choir was in there, because when I walked in, I was just like, it's like, it's done. It's over, Charice. Like, you have to forgive this man for your life. And it's the same day I had my son back from, being clean from drugs. And I'm like, I can't do this anymore. So I forgave him. And I didn't tell him. It was almost like the Lord kept my lips shut. But it was like between me and the Lord, I knew I forgave him. And he didn't know the Lord. But it was in that moment where I was like, oh, wow, this is... like, he's here and I'm able to forgive him. So
well, I think it even speaks to your strength that you didn't have to rub anything in his face.
No.
It was just between you and the Lord. And the forgiveness that you did internally, and it almost makes it that much more real when it happens that way. And so then this year, you were one of our stars of our Around the World scene. You were dancing. The joy on you was just so prevalent, and I think it's so inspiring to see how what the devil used for evil, God turned around and is using for good now. And I got to dance with your son in one of the scenes, and so it's just going on generationally now, and you're such an inspiration to all of us.
Thank you. It's actually, it's God. It's the glory of God, and to be on this stage, it was full. I was just joyful. I mean, the first night I was so full of emotion, but it was just joy, like to come back full circle and then share the stage with my son. And I gained the church back, and I gained a cast I didn't even know I needed my whole entire life. So yeah, it's so beautiful.
Thank you for being here,
Thank
Charice.
you. Thank you so much.
Well, Dream City Church puts a huge emphasis on our creative arts. We would have never known that creative arts would have such an impact on Charice's healing, but stories like this happen all the time, where God can use dancing, music, drama to heal those innermost parts of people's hearts. If you want to get involved in our amazing program, go to dreamcitychurch.us and click the Creative Arts tab to find out how you can get involved.